Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about everything board game related. Today we're going to be talking about another Key series game. I think this is like the 7th or 8th of them, David.
Key to the City, London.
London, that's right.
Yeah.
This is by the famed designers who, of course, did Keyflower, which is probably the most popular of those.
Yeah.
It's very simple. Only 4 pages of rules in there.
Right. It seems intimidating when you open this thing up and you look at all the tiles and like you said, that rule book, but it is just 4 pages when you get into it.
So basically all you're doing is you are either bidding for a tile with the people that you have, you are using a tile, or you are upgrading a tile.
Right.
So how the game works is a little bit different than Keyflower. In Keyflower, you have 4 different color meeples. One of them is the green, which is kind of the wild. In this one, you only have 3 different colored meeples, which are your primary colors. Each player is going to start off with 10 of these meeples, randomly drawn out of a bag. I believe there's 40 of each of them in the game. The player to your left will draw those out for you and put them behind your shield. You'll cover those up so only you know how many there are. This is kind of the cool portion of the game because you may have a huge amount of yellows, meaning that you can bid high on yellows and try to control those areas.
Yeah, I'm still not sure after playing it how much I want a lot of one color or how much I want an even mix, because it's great to have a lot of one color, but then you don't have any reds, because the way the mechanic works, which took some getting used to for me because I haven't played a lot of the Key series, you have to follow suit. Basically. Right. So the first person to either bid or use a location, whatever color they use, everyone who wants to either use that location or bid on it has to use that same color, which is that makes that mechanic, that auction mechanic, very, very interesting.
So to start off the game, each player will have a basic tile that's placed in front of them. Just like Keyflower, these tiles, or every tile in the game, can be upgraded at least once. Some of the monuments, which is new to this game, can be upgraded a second time. You don't flip it, but you add one of these monument tokens to them, which give you 12 victory points.
Right.
They're quite juicy. They'll start with one of these in front of you, and you're going to start with a particular number of tiles that you're going to be bidding on, depending upon the number of players. That's going to fluctuate. But you always have the same number of 1 tiles and the same number of tiles for the second round. Mm-hmm. These are kind of the resource gathering tiles in the game. What's new to this is the connectors. Now, these connectors, there's 6 different colors, and they represent the different things that connect the city tiles together. You have like water lines and waste sewage and electricity, and gas lines and so forth. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be building your own burrow within London that has all these connectors that go in different directions that will gain you victory points in the game.
And it's cool. The connectors, too, are used in those a lot of the upgrading functions.
Yes.
So when you're upgrading a lot of the tiles, some of them will just require some of the resources, but some require maybe 2 water lines to come into this plus something else.
So your 2 main resource gathering things, as David alluded to, are your tiles that allow you to gather pipes, basically. Mm-hmm. When you enact these abilities, you look at the bottom, anything in a yellow bordered area gathers those particular pipes. When you gather pipes, they have to be placed on your burrow immediately.
Right.
The other thing are the resources that David talked about. There's 3 different resources. There's coins, there's compasses, and then there's bricks. When you land on these areas, you just collect them and put them behind your board to be used for upgrading stuff later. So how the game actually works, though, is that as you said, on your turn, you will take a meeple or meeples or however you wish to use, and you're either bidding on a tile, and you just place it in the location that you are. So if I bid on this one, it's here. If I bid on this one, it's here. So it's always in the same location for orientation. Or you can enact the tile, and that's simply getting the resource that's available on it. Or if it's in your burrow, you can upgrade it as long as you have the resources and the connectors coming into it.
Right.
If that happens, you just flip it over. Move the connectors out of the way, flip the tile over, and move the connectors back in the same position.
And another interesting aspect is, and like the other Key games, you're able to put your meeples in other players' burrows as well.
Yeah.
So I can place a meeple over in Jeremy's area and utilize the power that he's taken, maybe from an earlier round that I wanted but I didn't get.
Right. So the cool aspect is that you really have this is a meeple management game.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what you're good in, what you're bad in, and try to use those meeples to get the enact abilities that you wish to do. So for instance, if I bid 1 on this location, David could come in with 2 blue meeples. Now, just like any other key game, you have to use the same colored meeples as David said. So if I start this with blue, blue has to be used either to bid higher or even to use the ability of the tile. So I can come back on the next turn and bid higher than him, or I can take this meeple and place it somewhere else on the board, using meeples from behind my board to add to it. What you can't do is take this meeple and just put it behind your board.
Right.
Again, you have to physically use this. And again, as David bid on that, I'd have to use a blue meeple to enact the ability again.
Right, and one of the cool things I found too is when you win the tile, you're going to lose the meeples that you bid on it.
Yes.
But if it was a really juicy tile that people used during that round, you get the meeples on the tile that were used.
Not only that, but if people go to your burrow and use abilities that are tiles that you've used through the course of the game, you'll also get those meeples and put them back behind your board at the end of the round. So how does this work? Each player on their turn gets to either bid, place to use the tile, upgrade a tile. They can also pass.
Yeah, and passing's important.
Passing is very important because it allows you to kind of make them use their meeples so you can come in and snipe at the end. However, if all three players pass, you have to sail. Yeah. And one of the actions you can take, though, is simply sailing. This is how turn order is established. Now, it's random at the beginning of the game, and it's in clockwise order from the start player. However, from the rest of the game, turn order is determined by when you decide to sail. Right. Sailing knocks you out of the round completely, so you can't take any more actions on bidding or taking actions onto the board. But what it does do is it allows you to pick up your marker and go to the next era. Now, this game is going to be played over 4 eras, which means there's 5 tiles out here. When you decide where to go, you can either become first player, but it also tells you how many meeples you get on the next round to draw from the bag. One of the other things you can do is bid last. You get a fewer amount of meeples, but you also collect that river tile that players were on from the previous round.
Exactly. In our first game, that was very appealing to me, so I stuck with that, and I collected rivers and really tried to score my points from that.
Right.
But it's kind of interesting because I was lucky that you guys didn't grab some of those as well, because I was really going that. And unfortunately, at the end of the game, what that meant was I'd taken very few meeples throughout the game. So I didn't have a lot of meeples.
Yeah.
And you and Gary both had a significant amount more meeples than I did.
Right.
So while I was able to score some points here, it sort of handicapped me a little bit as I was trying to get tiles in the later rounds.
And that's really the crux of the game. I mean, you are constantly managing what you're trying to do with the amount of meeples that you have, what turn order you want to take, how it's going to benefit you, and which tiles you're trying to pull. Because at the very end of the game, the 4th round is going to be end of the game scoring stuff. Yeah. These are things that you'll be able to see for the entire game. They're laid out in front of you at the very start of the game, depending upon the number of players. So you can see what you want to try to bid on at the end of the game, and you can start building your burrow out to establish some points at the end of the game, only if you win those tiles, though, right?
Right.
So, again, those will come out, and you'll have to bid on those at the end of the game.
Yeah, that can really burn you, and you see a tile, and you're like, okay, that's where I'm going. You head that direction. Then that final round comes, and you better have the right mix of meeples in order to secure it. Yeah. Not only that, if I'm sitting on a lot of blues, and I don't put my first meeple on my first turn on that tile that I want, and someone else puts a red one, which I don't have a lot of.
You're screwed.
I'm done.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that tile. But like the passing mechanic we talked about earlier, I think it was one of our first game we were playing, and I'd passed, and it drew out some more yellows from someone that they used on other tiles.
Right.
So I felt comfortable that they didn't have any more yellows, or at least few, and then I went in and bid one last time.
And the opposite of that is that we both could have passed, and then you would have not been able to get that tile because you would have been forced to set sail, right?
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
would have been able. So you're kind of
that same thing burnt me too with you because
Yeah.
I actually didn't pass one round, and because I didn't, you were able to do the same exact thing to me.
Yeah. So at the end of the game, you're going to add up all the points that you've scored. Points are scored by these. On each of these tiles, they have a gold symbol on them with a little coin. That's the points that you score for it. Whenever you upgrade, of course, they're upgraded for more points. And you're just going to score all your connectors. Some of them score by having particular colored connectors coming into them. Some score for adjacency of the same connectors. So if you have blue and blues go all through your burrow, you get points for those depending upon the tile that you have. And then monuments score points depending on how high they're upgraded. Rivers are going to score you points.
Yeah, the upgrading really seems to be sort of some of the bigger points because a lot of the tiles come in at 1 point.
Or none if you're starting.
Or none. And then when you upgrade them, they go from either 0 and 1 to 6.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, with the monuments, they can then go to 12.
Yeah.
So that upgrading is a pretty significant point scoring thing. A lot of those other things feel like almost bonus or icing on top of that cake a little bit.
What's really interesting, too, is that we forgot to mention in round or era 3, the tiles that come out that you're going to bid on come in upgraded.
Yeah.
Because you don't have time in the game at that point to spend upgrading them. So you're also... Do I want to upgrade my stuff? Do I want to buy a tile that's already upgraded and worth 6 victory points, but may serve me no purpose at all, right? So you're balancing that too with the meeples that you have. I personally like this game better than Keyflower. I understand that Keyflower is very popular. There's a lot more strategy involved in Keyflower, but also has a higher learning curve than this. This is a more. I've read some reviews. I know people are saying it's more streamlined, it's more simplified. It is, but it's not any less thinky. There's no less strategy in this game than what I got from Keyflower personally. And I don't know if you played Keyflower.
I've not played Keyflower. I've watched it played once, and it did seem a little bit more intimidating than what this ended up being when we played it. This seems very... You could tell, even not playing it, that this is a streamlined game. Yes. They've made some decisions. They've perfected some things. This game moved along at a nice clip.
Yeah.
Like, this does not overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
If anything... You feel like, well, wait a minute, I'm just getting the hang of this. Yeah. Is there not another round? You know,
yeah.
But it's a really, really tight little game. Lots of different ways to score your points. I think it's one of those games, too. I think you probably have to play it 2 or 3 times before you really understand where you've made some mistakes. And, like, I didn't upgrade my first game much.
Yeah.
And one upgraded tile would have made the win.
Well, yeah, you would have won the game.
You know, so there's some things to learn for sure. This is not the kind of game you just want to play once and go, well, that was fun. You definitely want to play it a few times.
Yeah. So, guys, that is Key to the City, London.
Key to the City, London.
Very cool game. Go check it out. It's definitely my favorite of the 3 Quined games that came out this year with Vanuatu and Papa.
I would agree.
Paulo.
I would agree.
So make sure you guys make comments below. Subscribe to us, please. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by TMG Games, publisher of great games like Yokohama, Guilds of London, and the soon-to-be-released Colosseum.